Hey guys, what's up? This is ScherBR talking. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're doing a full review of Therese, Georg, and Mech and evaluate if it's worth summoning or not. It's worth mentioning that this banner is recent in Japan, but that does not mean that the characters are absurdly overpowered like, Rufus. Let's start with Georg. For Georg, you see that he has one arrow for STR, 2 arrows for endurance. Giving a look on his multipliers, it's hard to understand him because he gets STR, not that high for JP current standards, but it's still okay for global. 90% for endurance and 17 plus, so the endurance is pretty good. And average dexterity, average agility, average for Japan, but right now 70 is not so bad. And then low intelligence, low love, and low charm, but high will. Well, he's a tank, so he really needs more will, and it kinda helps him survive some content. He will decrease incoming damage by his passives, but we need to talk about this later. So, the first skill is a heal spell called Moonlight. So you need to use a light plus weapon with him. Well, it increases a little of healing, and, well, he may be better on healing than on doing damage. Yeah, of course, he doesn't have any damage passives. The Moonlight spell was buffed in global. It carries also a Morale Up buff that was made for Fei-on Empress, and he carries the buff as well. The healing is actually good, but because he doesn't have many love or charm to heal himself, the healing will not be so strong. Right now in Japan, if he has a maxed double S weapon, because we cannot get this type of weapon yet, he heals for around 1.1k to 1.2k. In global, he will be healing for around 850 or 900 or something like that. It's okay for us because we only have around 1.2k HP. It should heal enough. And also give an increased damage by Morale Up. Then we have the second skill, and this one is interesting because the power is good actually. It's 32 modifier, 8 power, and not just about the damage. I even think that the damage is not important. He gives himself a buff to agility of up to 25%. The problem is that his agility is not so high to take into advantage evasion right from the start. But if you can stack many agility buffs, maybe coming from some other characters like Matriarch, Noel's daughter, he will get very high agility and will evade some attacks. Then we have the last skill that makes no sense to me because, look, this attack is both slash and hit. It's interesting because it can be used on turn 1, but it comes with a price. 3 LP. Yeah, 10 BP and 3 LP. If he uses this once, he cannot use it again. The damage is pretty high. It's comparable to Fuse. Fuse has a turn 2 AoE fast attack that carries similar power, but he does way more damage because he has damage passives and also higher status. You can compare this damage to, well, the newest version of Asilus. Her Enya Eosia does very similar damage to this skill, and she does not need to use LP. So it's kind of something that you can do when you want to farm, but this guy is not needed on farming. He will probably help newcomers because newcomers may not be so fast on clearing stages. Okay, but then after that, you will only be able to use a single target attack with the second skill. And he don't want to keep using LP because he will not be able to heal. He can use the third skill once and then 2 Moonlights if he does not die. But he will not die in farming situations. And this can be interesting for those that like defensive strategies. It's just that this game is more offensive and we need to clear fast to get more rewards. Now for the first passive, he can reduce the incoming damage of the first 3 hits by 50%. That is only if he gets hit. If you evade, it will not take into consideration. But remember, Silver Emperor had a similar passive, but for Silver Emperor, it will just totally ignore the damage. His version is a little weaker, yeah, only 50%, but he has other passives that kinda makes it almost 0 damage. It's very low damage because of the second and third passives. But it's just an interesting thing to look, because if you use him as a tank, if you try to use him on the front of a Tiger Shark formation, he would take these 3 hits very fast. So I kinda try to look at this guy with a different view, and, well, you can use him as your main tank, but maybe you shouldn't. There are better tanks that can taunt, that can also give guard up to themselves. He will just lose the first passive very fast. So what you can do with him is use him for heals. And in Japan, I understand why they made this character, because right now, the bosses can remove the debuffs that you apply to them. They can remove your buffs as well. So you can try to buff yourself, but then the boss will just remove the buffs. So that means that the damage that the boss will give to you will be very high after you lose your buffs. So maybe the passives that comes from this guy will allow you to survive, and he will revive someone in your squad that's maybe an important character. Yeah, you have to pay the price, because this guy will be mostly just a healer and nothing else. If he's used as a tank, he may not be as good as you think. Okay, and then the second passive is interesting because this thing here stacks with guard up, and it will reduce the damage to all allies by 10% if everyone is alive, but only if everyone is alive. And because he's a healer, sometimes he will heal characters that just died, and when they die, the effect will not be active. At least his agility should not be so bad, so he will revive a character and the effect will get back and be active again. So this is the same passive that Award Sophia had, but Award Sophia had a lot of problems with her own design. And she's not a tank, she would just die easier. This guy will not die easily. And then the last passive makes it even harder to die. This one is active all the time, and it's just the same as the latest tanks in Japan. The true tanks, because the tanks that we received are not true tanks. Like Aiden is an evasion tank, Dove is an evasion tank, Cotton is a self-sustained tank. But a true tank like last version of Juden and some other characters reduces damage by 30%. And this allows him to survive even better, because it will be active all times, even if someone dies. So, a tank that should not be your main tank that heals. That's interesting, but right now, in Global, we don't need, because the bosses are not like the JP current standards. So in my opinion, even if you can see the usefulness of this guy, will you really use him right now? No, I don't think so. Maybe only if you like to play defensively. And you can kind of wait for his return. I think he was made for raids where the damage of the bosses are insane. That's also the reason why some of the members of my Discord community say that Mercetin is more useful now in Japan, because the damage cannot be stopped, and if she survives, she will just heal and revive everyone, and that's interesting. So this guy will prove to be more useful later. He comes with a price, he's not a full tank, he's just the best defensive healer in the game. And now let's talk about Therese. She only has 2 styles as well. She gets 2 arrows for dexterity, 1 for agility, and her A style has 2 arrows for agility. Bummer, because we will have to use this if we want to reach the cap. And for multipliers, she has bad endurance, very high dexterity on 96, high for JP even, high agility, low intelligence, she does not need intelligence, above average will, so she is better to receive magical damage instead of physical, and a very high charm. The reason is because she has an attack that can charm. It's okay, she doesn't have such a high multipliers in the totals, only 497. I already saw characters with 520. She sacrificed something here. Because also she's a bow user that don't need SCR, yes. Now for our skills, the first one is Rapid Volley with Flame. It's essentially the same Rapid Volley, the same multiplier, the same damage, but with a lower cost. It's only 4 BP now, and it adds heat. So it's good because we kind of lack some heat damage. We don't have many AoE heat damage in the game. Most of them are even limited. But there's a problem. Her second skill is not heat. It's only pierce. So Barrage Shoot is amazing by itself if you compare the power. It's B power 26 modifier, very close to an A. Even some attacks that could only be casted on the second turn would sometimes be B. Some of them will be A, but it's very close to an A without having a higher cost. Only 9. And you can use Barrage Shoot on turn 1 and then Rapid Volley with hit on turn 2 and then on turn 3 because she gets 1 more BP by her passive. So she starts with 11. 11, and then on turn 3 she has 17. Enough to cast Barrage Shoot into Rapid Volley. The problem here is that, I don't know why, but they didn't give heat on the second skill. So it kind of limits her on the same time. If you want to use her in stages that the enemies are only weak against heat, the first hit will not kill the enemies, even though it's so powerful. I don't know why they did this. And at least the first Rapid Volley attack can be used in many other situations where you want constant damage, like Spiral Tower and Zui Coliseum. But in Hidden Dojo and Robin Cup, you will want to start with Barrage Shoot because you, well, have more BP or you can clear faster. The damage will still be good because she has passives that increases her damage potential, but it's something that you have to understand. The third skill is now Heart Seeker Plus, because it's an upgraded version of the original Heart Seeker that was only A power. Now it's triple S power and 50 Knights multiplier. And I must say that it's an interesting skill because it has a medium chance to charm, but how many times do you need charm in this game, especially with single target? I don't know, many. Maybe a specific boss for an event, but in Japan they kinda ignore most status effects for bosses, but I don't think it should be so useful for autoplay. Yeah, for auto you just use AoE with this girl. In single target scenarios, if you use Heart Seeker, you can still use Rapid Volley with hit, but then on the third turn you will not be able to attack with skill, only normal attack. Heart Seeker is also not as strong as you may think if you compare her to Hannibal. Hannibal has a very high damage output, his passives are amazing, but also the multiplier is higher. 59 is kind of on the start of the triple S damage calculation. I think that she sacrificed a little of her power in order to get the charm, because she just got this upgraded skill instead of getting original skill for herself. Well, with all that said about the skills, we have the first passive that increases her damage by 20% when she's on full HP, 15% when she's equipping a bow, every time. And then Battle Tension is 15% increase at all times and 1 more BP on the start of a battle. That's because she needs 9 for Barrage Shot and then 4 plus 4 for Rapid Volley, meaning 17 in 3 turns. This is what allows her to cycling good for AoE. But remember, if you just want her for heat, it may give you some problems because the first attack does not have heat. But if you are using her for stages that have some undeads that are weak to Pierce, they are always weak to both Pierce and Heat, so in these scenarios she will work fine, but it kinda limits her a little here and there. In my opinion, she's good for AoE because we kinda lack heat damage. I like her passives for farming. She has a very high agility. It means that she will go first in many scenarios. Even I don't see many uses of her in boss fights. Heart Seeker does not bring enough damage to justify using her. She does not self-heal. We like self-healing characters for boss fights. But not just that, but she also fails to have other options for single targets. Most boss fights are only one boss. But then, if you want a character for auto-farming, she will work. She's stronger than all other bow users right now that we have. She also brings heat. You can stop Barrage Shoot on 12 and just keep using Rapid Volley, but then you need to use her with some other characters because the power is not so high. She's not bad at all, but she's also not perfect either. Heart Seeker is also an interesting thing because I have Heart Seeker here opened, and as you can see, there is Tower Claudia. She's free, you can get her just by killing her the tower. And Zilling. Zilling is not so good, she will not keep up with damage, but Claudia, we have a War Claudia in Global, most people have her. She's pretty strong and she now becomes a very good single target nuker. She also brings the same problems as this version of Therese, because after that she doesn't have any attack so good to keep using. In Heartseeker it's 10, it's not 9. The cycle is so strange. Unless you bring Nawal's daughter to decrease this to 9, so 3 turns for every usage. It's still a problem, but very good for moments where you don't have a better Pierce opener. And I think that the damage won't be so different from Award Claudia and this version of Therese. Yes, Therese does more damage, but you can live with Award Claudia, unless you need both. Time to talk about Mech, and we were saving the best for last, because this guy is the star of the banner. We can see that he has 1 arrow for endurance and 2 for dexterity, and this kind of explains him. He's a AoE nuker with some tank capabilities. For multipliers, he has 90% on endurance, that's extremely high. 100 for dexterity, that's similar to the newest Fuse and also Rofa's, very high, and plus 15 even. Then 80% on agility, that's not bad at all. He loses for the newest Fuse because the newest Fuse is so insane in agility. And plus 13 as well. Then we will not be talking about intelligence because he does not use. There's 15 for love, intelligence and charm, and 70 for will. The will value is not bad. He can be used in boss fights for some situations and he would not receive that much damage. But he's better for physical encounters. Talking about skills, the first one is a single target damage that is not bad. It's C power, 15 multiplier. It's mostly for moments where you want to do some damage to contribute, maybe to finish, and you don't have VP to cast skill number 2 or 3. But this is not his selling point. His selling point is skill number 2 and 3 that can be used in different scenarios, many different scenarios actually. The skill number 2, it's an AoE attack with blunt and heat properties. Very nice, heat again. The power is 23, it's lower than the third skill, but because it carries a very interesting effect, it gives himself a guard up of 50% decrease in damage. That's insane. He reduces damage by half. Not exactly counting the holy stones that you can equip. But then, because he has such a high endurance, even himself guard up will help him in Tiger Shark formations if you want to use him as a tank. I don't know if he will work as a tank in all scenarios, because he lacks some other stuff that we will need to talk about later. But then it's still a powerful AoE attack with a character that has good agility. You can kind of make him attack first, depending on the scenarios, like using reverse sigmoid. Sometimes you have higher agility when using Rainbow Rangers as well. Deadly Pierce. It also opens for squads that uses hit damage, like Barthélemy, if you want Barthélemy to act on the second turn, or some other characters like Fuse as well, because Fuse is blunt. So even though it's defensive for boss fights, it's still offensive for farming. Two things on the same time. Now the third skill. This one is amazing. Simply amazing. Why? It's a AoE attack with 10 BP when you awaken, and it carries 2 different damage, Slash and Pierce. Slash with a gunner. Yeah, we have with Rufus, but Rufus is different. It's an AoE attack that can open for many scenarios, like you want to use Buny after him, you can. Just use Rainbow Rangers. He will get 50% increase in dexterity, he will be able to finish the first wave by himself. Buny can sometimes finish the second wave by herself by using the intelligence position, and we can use a third character to finish the third wave. Can even be another fast attacker. So having a character that uses dexterity allows us to use Rainbow Ranger better for Slash. I think I was using Dragon Strike most of the time because of being easy to use with Slash attackers. But then having a character like Mech that can produce different type of damage than usual allows for many different scenarios. And I mean many. It also does Pierce damage. Pierce is normal for Dex slots, but it still allows for you to use characters like Xenon or Mikhail that also use turn 2 Pierce fast attacks. So he opens for many different situations. This guy even do more damage than Joe. A lot of people were hyping Joe so far because Joe is good because she's also a turn 1 fast attacker. We only had so far Barthélemy for AoE, and now we will be able to get Joe. Joe is both heat and cold. She does not compete with him, but in some situations enemies are weak to both Pierce and heat, so you can still use both together. You can even kind of try to use Joe on the first turn, then use Mech in turn 2, and someone else to finish in the end. And it's amazing to have someone that will just keep increasing the utility of other fast attackers. And even if you don't think about fast attack, he's still very good. But there's only one problem with him. He will not follow up with another AoE attack. The first skill is single target. So we will be using him for fast strategies that he clears a wave and just that. Unless you need some extra help to finish the last wave. But still, he's not the best thing for this. So the usage is good, but it also relies on having some other fast attackers to increase the potential and also the squad compositions. This guy is amazing, and like I said, he does more damage than Joe and Barthélemy. Let's compare the two. So now we have some fast attackers here to compare, and in the top we have Mech. He's a turn 1 fast attacker. The multiplier is even higher than Grand Cross. And now comparing to turn 1, we have Joe with 23 multiplier, and we have Barthélemy with 20. We can even click on them to check the damage potential right now in Japan. Let's click on Mech. Mech does 20,000. But there is a problem. This calculation do not take into consideration the dex buff that he has. We will have a look on this later. And now let's compare to Joe. Joe gets pretty close, but Joe does not have any status buff. And then we have Barthélemy. Barthélemy is also not so far, but, well, Joe does more. And that's because he has 45% increase in damage. Well, you know what's good about this? They don't really compete with each other. They can be used together. You can use Mech as an opener or just a second wave attacker. You can use Joe as an opener. Sometimes the enemies will be weak against the 2 attributes because these attacks have 2 attributes. So sometimes an enemy is weak against Slash, but also against Moon. So you can use Barthélemy together with Mech. Sometimes the enemy will be weak against Heat, so you can use Joe and Barthélemy. Sometimes it will be weak against Pierce and Heat, so you can use the 3 together. You see, there are many different scenarios when you can combine them all. And Grand Cross is sun damage, also something different. We can stack these characters and have different effects. Legend Treasure is amazing, I already said that. And it gets a little more damage by the second passive that he will get Dexterity and Endurance every new turn. The buff is 15% increase, and that's very good because it stacks, and he never fails to have a buff active. If you can keep increasing it even further with Matriarch, Matriarch will only increase his Endurance, but not the Dexterity. Only a future version of Matriarch increases Dexterity. But he can also be used with Null's Daughter. He reaches high potential with Null's Daughter very, very fast. Also, she helps him keep up with the second skill because it gives him Guard Up. And he really needs to use this if you want him to tank. He's not exactly a full tank, guys, but he can take a lot of physical damage if the boss does only physical damage. And he can be used in the Tiger Shark formation because that formation also increases Dexterity. So the damage will be good. Yes. Then, giving a look here, we have the first passive being supportive. He cleanses all status elements on the end of a turn. So someone casts Paralyze on him, he cleans. Any type of status elements will be cleansed. He also self-heals, but the healing is pretty low. I think it should be around 80s, 90s here on global. Yeah, or maybe close to 100. But it helps. Yes, it helps. And then the last one is Fired Up 5 with 20% increasing damage at all times. So this guy will also be used in the future in some other scenarios like the Battle Island. He will be an opener for many, many different stages. So I regard him as one of the best characters in the game right now, even if you compare him to Joe. Joe is good. The good thing about Joe is that Joe has another style in the future and she can follow up her fast AoE attack with some normal AoE attacks, and that allows her to, well, not rely too much on having perfect combinations. While he will be better for those that already have many other fast attackers, although not just for these situations. He's a good character that do not need inheritance and stay strong as he is. The star of the banner, in my opinion. Now we are back to the banner image. Is it worth summoning here? Sorry, I don't have a clear answer for you. The reason is people will evaluate banners with different mentality. We will have to pay a high price for Mech if we fail to get him soon. 45,000 gems is a lot, but we had to pay similar prices in the past. Like, Mirza banner had only him as the limited one. Also, Nawal's Daughter was the same. So, the risk of having to pity a character is something that may cost too much, depending if you don't have many gems. And we are very close to a full year anniversary that should be coming in July. I do believe that they will be giving a lot of gems, so you don't need to have 100,000 gems to save for July. So if you see value in Mech, it's okay to summon. Therese is good. She's pretty strong for current global. We don't have any competition in the bow user slot. Maybe a Ward Claudia, but she does not do as much damage as Therese, although not so much different. And then we have Georg, and Georg is a niche type of healer that has some tank capabilities. He's not someone that will die easily, but he was designed for the future. Right now, his usefulness is limited. He's a niche character. So if you have the gems and you want to invest on Mech, I think that this guy will be useful for the foreseeable future. It's okay to invest here. And this guy offers similar volley to Joe. Joe may even offer a little more volley because she has a future SS style that she can keep attacking with AoE after the fast attack. She's also a healer. She's also an intelligence debuffer. But the volley of Mech is pretty similar. I don't know about you, but I will be summoning for Mech. And I only have around 21,000 gems. And the reason is just that I think that this guy will be useful for the foreseeable future. And I'm willing to pay the price. Do you? Well, thanks so much for watching this video. Please subscribe if you haven't. And if you want to support the channel, you have the links here in the description. Also, if you have a different opinion, please share here in the comment section. We see each other on the next video. Bye.